that she created, and shift
Oops, sorry. I'm going to mute you. I'm just going to go ahead and just start putting it up because if I don't do it in a process, then I will get lost. But we are somewhat live, so I should probably put the video back up. Yes. Yes. Okay. But I'm in the private chat that should be on the side of your window. Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching this evening. We are ready to get started, and I first wanted to give the three of y'all the chance to plug anything because FD has to leave early, and I don't want to wait till the end, so y'all can plug at the beginning before we do anything else. You'll have to unmute yourselves, though.
I guess I'll go first since I'm going to go first. Excuse me. Dropping a video next Monday, hopefully. Waiting for an editor to hit me back today. It's semi-related because it's kind of a meta-analysis of the manosphere. It'll feel different than most manosphere videos, including my own previous ones. I actually talk a bit about neurodivergence and its connection to the manosphere. In it, I also I'm constantly trying to let people know I do have a podcast now, though I'm not really pushing it out as much just yet. Excuse me. And that's a Signified podcast. So please check that out when you get a chance.
All right. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Consciously, I have a podcast that I just signed on with Amazon and Wondery called Black History for Real. It's available on all podcast platforms. New episodes come out on Mondays. I'm also updating my Conscious University. I have two online courses there that'll be available on my website. And then the last thing is I'm currently completing 2 kids books about social media and social issues, looking to get that published by the end of the quarter. Be on the lookout for those things, definitely.
Awesome. Bill, anything?
Yeah, I have a video coming out March sometime. I don't know yet when in March. But it's basically about black men in dresses. So it's semi-related to this. So there you had it.
Hey, I'm working on that's crazy. I'm working on a video like that as well right now, literally.
And Bill already know I dropped one like 2 weeks ago.
I know, and I told him about that too. I'm tired of that. It's not the third, fourth time.
It's a running joke that me and Bill are often working on the same video at the same exact time. And so without warning, I'll just drop a video and Bill be like, yeah, I'm dropping the same video in 3 weeks. So
I have noticed your pattern with that, and it's always been funny, but I like both of your takes in different ways. So like that's kind of what I wanted to have y'all all on. Because like I don't know how much y'all know, or I'm pretty sure y'all probably don't know anything about FDM. We're a all autistic organization, and we do social specifically disability justice work and looking at systems change work. So we do really big ideas and try to make it comprehensible on the little level in education, healthcare, and safety. So I thought, or all of you have had content that I have remarked on all of the content that it really needs to come together in this way that talks about it from the neurodivergent standpoint, which I don't think there's been anything solidly done in that arena, especially when it comes to like parenting practices. And honestly, FD, your podcast that just released this past week really feels like it also pulls into this topic, because we can talk about the ways that our parenting stuff leads into this idea, this place where it leaves a lot of neurodivergent boys vulnerable to the online algorithm, and how because we end up having all these practices looking at conformity and control. I'm going to go with conformity and control within a K through 12 environment, and therapy and education and in the home ends up leading to the incel pathway. And so I thought I would have you all on and just like let it roll, because I love hearing all of you talk about these topics, and you all have different pieces that can connect together for it.
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in there. you know, so I want to be clear to whomever watching that I am not diagnosed with any specific behavioral neurodivergent in category, although I am well aware of the traits I tend to carry. Conscious give me that. It's probably only just because I haven't bothered to get to a doctor about it, because I'm older than everybody, and I always make the comment that although neurodivergence obviously did exist when I was younger, and this is even true for Conscious, I think, as a kid, as a Black boy in particular, if you exhibited neurodivergent traits, you were bad or lazy. You know what I'm saying? You were somewhere or weird. You know, you were one of those things. They didn't really have the language or even the development of the analysis of the behavior, especially for Black boys. So I think it's more just a matter of the fact that I was born at a different time. That said, I do have one child that is ADHD, and one child who we know is on the spectrum in some form or fashion, but we're kind of just letting it. We're resisting medicalization until necessary, which is another conversation that would need to come up. But I do have two boys who I know are going to be, that's going to be a relevant thing, this connection between neurodivergence and like regressive reactionary thought, misogyny, etc. And I want to be clear, shout out to some of my folks, Jesse, Gender, Aeronaut, who I've been consulting around with this video. It's important to point out that neurodivergence is not a cause for this type of behavior. It's just a correlative risk factor. And that issue is indicative of a greater societal problem and not specifically the neurodivergence experience, but the neurodivergence experience does emphasize certain risk factors for manosphere regressive content because, and I want to point out a shout out again to First is Tragedy, I think is his name, who I interviewed. He did a video about the autistic manosphere and who was autistic himself. And we talked and he was like, the thing that the manosphere promises you is that it can teach you how to be normal. That once you buy their course and listen to their things and sign up for their newsletter, whatever, they can teach you how to be normal. And so it speaks to kind of this primacy of normalized behavior being weaponized against people who are neurodivergent. And it speaks to one of the reasons for this video, and I'll stop here, is to kind of like not so much get away from the debunking, because like I enjoy it. That's the key to the buck. I enjoy my debunks, I enjoy my takedown videos, etc. But it's also to make sure that we're injecting the system analysis to how a lot of this stuff works. Because you can't, no amount of debunking is going to change the mind of the zealots who are in these spaces. They've seen it already. So yeah, a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, that's why I chime in. I think that when you to me, like the interconnected nature of like how misogyny gets pushed and how it preys on different individuals, I'm gonna say insecurities. I've been diagnosed with ADHD, and I know I look back on life, I can recognize there's been different ways that being neurotypical was packaged and sold to me, and it was incentivized that I purchased it in many different instances, and it was incentivized that I got material and symbolic, you know what I'm saying, affirmation and, you feel me, acceptance. But I feel like when I think about it now in terms of like structures, like gender violence specifically, I recognize there are different ways that I think that society has made it easy for different Black men uniquely to kind of get in to the manosphere or get into different, I'm gonna say very, very pathological, conspiracy-esque type notions about gender. and because I feel like, to me, from a philosophical point, once you're able to start questioning shit around you as being like suspect or being skeptical, and you become a skeptic, it in many instances becomes easy for individuals to play on your skepticism and to like almost trick you into some nonsense. You know what I'm saying? But that's really how I see it. And when I say manosphere, Sheldon, and we're talking about a community of, I would say I'm actually curious to hear y'all, all three, y'all definition. Actually, I'll go first. I would describe manosphere as being a ecosystem or a network of men that have different presentations of masculinity, but for the most part, the consistency is like, these bitches got to make sandwiches, and you feel me? If I can't be the man that I want to be, there has to be some femininity or some womanish reason or why I can't exude the masculinity or manhood that I want to, and that's usually how like the ideology works. That's what I would say though. I'm definitely curious, a little Bill, FDOG, what y'all definition, or how would y'all describe the manosphere to somebody?
I guess I'll go ahead and chime in. The manosphere to me is the dirtiest, mustiest barbershop you have ever been to, where every hotel go with the clippers that got old hair in it that ain't been cleaned out. That's the man, because at the end, that's all it. If you've been in any black barbershop in America, you have heard all of these points from boyhood. It's the same old. It's just recycled. It's recycled gender war garbage, and it's all based on the same, that we going back to the thing. I always come back to the idea that, particularly when it comes to black men being susceptible to that train of thought, it all comes back to the historical emasculation of black men. And long story short, it's us overcompensating for what we were robbed of, going back to slavery. And that's the thing, is it don't just stop there. If you look at the history of Reconstruction, if you look at, we like a lot of stuff that we taught, and it's wild because, growing up with, I call them diet hotep. I call them, Garvey lights. Instead of Garvey ites, they Garvey lights. Is what I grew up around. And they got part of it, like the whole, we were supposed to get 40 acres and a mule, bada. That's true. That's real, right? So all of that, the repeal of that order, the repeal of the Freedmen's Bureau, and you can go down the line, all of that served one purpose, and that was to rob us of the means of being able to achieve white supremacist standards of what being a man is supposed to be. So not only are you telling me that just by virtue of the fact that I am not human, that I am subhuman, so I cannot be a man even if I wanted to be, you have now robbed me of the means to prove you wrong, right? So instead, we just learned how to, and this is, I don't want to get too much away in it, but part of what I talk about is, when you grow up in an environment, and I'm sure, Conscious and Feek have heard, grew up in an environment where you hear stuff like, no homo, pause, all that kind of stuff. That's a social sanction, right? That's saying that you are operating outside of the accepted standards of masculinity. And the reason why that's a problem, reason why you don't see, little white boys do it, but they don't do it with the same vitriol that black boys do it. And the reason why is because you acting gay, that reflects bad on all of us. That ain't just you, bruh. That's all of us. You understand what I'm saying? So it makes us susceptible to fall into that line of thinking, because even if we're not willing to acknowledge it, one thing I say about people all the time, that people are a lot smarter than what they give themselves credit for. They may not have the word, they may not know hegemonic masculinity, they may not know, dialectics, they may not have the words for it, but they know that there's a part of them that knows that I've been robbed of something that would allow me to achieve what I've been taught is what makes a man. But instead of saying, all right, well, the problem is accepting that as fact to begin with, they say, all right, I'm gonna go a different route. And then that's how they get absorbed into all of that red pill talk, into all of that kind of stuff and whatever and whatnot. So I think specifically for Black boys, it starts with acknowledging the fact that what the majority of us were taught what it means to be a man, the white man gave that to us. You know what I mean? So once you are at that point, then you can begin the process of unlearning and dismantling those systems that have been put in place to overcompensate for that emasculation to begin with.
So I want to go ahead and chime in here before I let this go on, but I wanted to bring it in because since we want to have a therapeutic approach, I want to talk about it in terms of like current practices in K through 12, because we have this higher rate of autism amongst black and brown kids than white kids now, like as of last year. And so it makes me concerned when we start looking at the ways that we have controls inside a school system, what it's going to end up doing to autistic Black boys in particular, to have this heavy emphasis on masking and on compliance, because that's like the next step is more control in those areas once you have the diagnosis.
Yeah, so that's interesting to hear. That's not something I was aware of, but I won't say it makes sense, but I can imagine it. So having worked both in the schools as a teacher and then as a social worker and then a behavioral health researcher, I've seen like I've touched on every part of this equation. And for lack of a better way of putting it, at least in the state of Georgia, there's fuckery up and down the spectrum there. So I do worry about the absence of racial in general in schools, whether they're all Black, half white, or it's flies in the milk. There is a general absence of elevated understandings of how race works in the schools, of how racialization, specifically with Black boys, Black girls as well, but definitely with Black boys, engages with how they're treated and how they're viewed. So it makes sense that things like masking and compliance are emphasized among neurodivergent Black boys, because there's this innate fear of Black boys who are unable to behave. I'm scared of what they're going to do too. Like one of the last things I did in my last job before I went full time on YouTube is we were working on developing essentially new language to give to doctors to let them know, hey, you can't give the best practices for ADHD is not to medicate children under 5. The research and everything else says we don't medicate until after they're 5 years old. They'll be best served by this, that, and the third. But these doctors just, and the thing though is, we have to be holistic about this. The doctors will come back and tell us that the parents, specifically mothers, are saying they can't handle the child, right? And they've taken the child, the school can't handle, the parent can't get the child in school without medication because the school can't handle the child. So we're talking about like layers of a problem that all starts with, and I can't believe I'm gonna emphasize the work of one Dr. Umar Johnson. I'm gonna give him a single flower for a moment, because this was what he was initially most known for this. And in this realm, he is correct. There is a genuinely racist, he's a broken clock. Honestly, there's a genuinely racist demeanor toward Black boys in our schools that has existed for a while. And he's not the first person. I can't remember the brother's name that did. There's Miseducation of the Negro. The brother that did the conspiracy to destroy little Black boys. Like, this is a well-known thing. And until we attack that thing, they're always going to come up with less than ideal solutions, such as teaching autistic children how to mask, than to respond to their needs holistically and effectively that doesn't harm them in the long run. So somebody said I did not see that coming.
And I think that's the double-edged sword of it, is that we can acknowledge that Dr. Umar did have some on fire analysis about how Black boys uniquely are pathologized for being irrational, for not having capacity to think, or not being, you feel me, rational actors. You see what I'm saying? So we see how like ableism uniquely gets scripted on to Black boys' bodies. I think the double-edged sword comes in when we're able to acknowledge that there was a legacy of in our community being able to pray, smoke, drink away symptoms of damn near anything. So being able to acknowledge that, yes, in our community, we do have a almost need the double consciousness. Like externally speaking, people with our community through a very pathological lens that usually lends hands to disability and ableism, where it's just being scripted all different type of crazy ways. We also can acknowledge there are ways that our community is very I would say like ignorant and or just straight up ignore, really straight up like disavow the idea of anybody being autistic or anybody having, you know what I'm saying, neurodivergence in any way, shape, or fashion. So for me, it'd be really trying to compromise and account for these two very real, in my mind, like very opposite of the spectrum things that's happening simultaneously. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, yeah, there are individuals that get criminalized based off of how they mask or their inability to mask whatever, you know what I'm saying, thing they actually dealing with. You feel me? And recognizing that, I know for me, that was something I seen before I got in this that I feel like was just crazy. My wife sent me a video of this Black woman talking about the gifted and talented program. And she was being very humorous, but she talked about it as being like a quote unquote slow class, and acknowledging that there were a lot of individuals that got marked as gifted and talented that were really just, you picked up shit too early, and them folks in that classroom felt like you were starting to be a distraction, so they sent you somewhere else as gifted and talented. It didn't really enhance your speaking or enhance your academic skills at all. It just is acknowledged that, hey, you get done with the class assignment a little quicker than everybody else, so I'm gonna send you off somewhere. And it made me really think about just like the stigma of disability or ableism and racism, and how even when you think about being gifted and talented, it's still like, you know what I'm saying, as somebody that was put in that program, it's still some pathology and ableism, racism, even in that. So I think it's just a lot to just unpackage the more we talk about it.
Yeah, I was just about to make that point because I am a pew baby, and I grew up with the, you know, just pray and fast everything away. And I ain't find so full disclosure, I am on the spectrum. I ain't find out until I was 23. And a big part of that was because of that. And it just like Conscious was saying, it is a double consciousness where on one hand, you know, only way that I can make it make sense in my head, and this is just purely, you know, me working it out in my head right now, is yes, son, is it comes back to a degree of respectability, right? That we understand that the system is racist toward Black boys. We can acknowledge that, at the same time acknowledge the fact that, all right, I understand that you may be atypical, but you got to shape that up real quick, because, you know, Officer Jim Bob don't care nothing about your neuro atypicalness. He don't care. So get it together. You know, your prospective employer don't care. So get it together. So it's a double consciousness of acknowledging that, yes. And I think as a result, what we wind up doing is we wind up doing our children a disservice by de-emphasizing the fact that there are just some behaviors that they just can't mask the way that society expects them to, right? And that's not a problem on them. that's a structural issue. You know what I mean? But it's a lot easier to look at that child and say, you need to get it together than, you know, to go down to the police department and say, listen, my son finna learn how to drive and he not, you understand what I'm saying? It's a lot easier to tell Elijah McClain, you feel me, to, you know, act normal than it is to tell, you know, the officer that just see another nigga walking down the street. You understand what I'm saying? Then to tell him, you know, slow your roll, you know, figure that out. You know, he only got 3 months worth of training and, you know, 30 hours worth of community college. He don't know no better. He should, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But as a result, we wind up backing our kids into a corner where they don't really know which direction to go. You know what I mean? And again, as somebody who lived through it, I distinctly remember having those experiences. I distinctly have it, you know, every single parent-teacher conference I had as a child was the same thing was, oh, yeah, William is very bright. He's one of the smartest kids we have in our class. Matter of fact, we thinking about promoting him. But he's this. He's lazy. He's disruptive. He talks constantly. All of these different things. And so it was always on me to get it together. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I can't. But I don't know how to explain it because y'all not hearing it. You know what I mean? Because, you know what I'm saying? So I don't even remember what the point I was trying to get at with that, but basically, yeah, that we don't do our kids a disservice by basically talking out of both sides of our mouths, right? It's telling them that, yeah, you know, the system is rigged in a way that, you know, puts you behind the 8 ball, but at the same time, you got to act a certain way, even though I kind of understand that you can't really. But I'm just going, in a lot of cases, literally, I'm just going to pray that you do eventually. So,
yeah, there's a the paradox of like the thing I try to do more now, even with the Manosphere goofies, is to like imagine or engage with this reality that they're not shitty on purpose. You know what I'm saying? That like this is a maladaptive response to a problematic environment. You know, it would be great if the response wasn't, you know, just be normal, just don't be this, you know, misogyny, etc. That'd be great if that wasn't the response. But I try to keep in mind that they're responding to a specific problem that neither of us have control over. And so when that happens with the Manosphere, it's a little less, I'll have a little less patience. But with the kids, I try to like emphasize that because of that thing. Because at the end of the day, when you are talking to a child and you're asking a child to mask, as a underserved Black parent who may not have access to the best resources or education around those or around the needs for you and your child, you're just thinking about survival, right? And we want to hold space for how that looks from their perspective. I've been in the rooms with parents of children, little boys and girls, who are basically like, I don't know what to do with my child. Now, they've only beat, prayed, and brought them to court. You know, so we're going to add this therapy in and see how you respond. But I understand that, you know, the access to therapy is not even fathomable to some of these families. You know what I'm saying? Access to behavioral therapy is not even fathomable. They don't even imagine that because that's something that's just becoming more readily available to non-moneyed white people, let alone Black folks. Like it's white folks just getting the therapy in the last decade. You know what I'm saying? So you can best believe that for underserved communities, that was less likely. So it's a rough thing. And it's one of the reasons why, you know, stuff like this is useful and important, because it hopefully is giving people language, you know what I'm saying, to take back to people and spread certain ideas.
thank you all. That was incredible and went in directions I was hoping it would go, because y'all talk about things in similar ways all the time. So it was really nice. But I think I want to focus in on how then this track of, when we get into this, we're trying to showcase that neurotypicality is the preferred way, and then how over time that means that it prioritizes whiteness in autistic boys' behavior, and how that will lead down these paths that we don't want them to go.
That right there is be my beef a lot of times with the manosphere. I think that a lot of projection happens. A lot of times that the dudes be regurgitating surface level criticisms of feminism they heard, when in actuality it's like, hey, you're accusing black women of wanting to be like the white woman, but you really regurgitating white male misandry, man's right speaking points, thinking that you being a great liberator. So for me, it's always thinking about how when we start to get into like neurotypicality and what types of actions and standards is going to be verified, to me, it's obvious that that's what happens. And for me, it makes me think about like, damn, so you really want to be like the white man, huh? So if the white man has the ability to dominate and do this for the women in their community, you believe it's only equality if you should be able to do the same thing to women in your community. That is noted. And the second thing I think is that the way that gender roles become marked, or the way that gender roles become an accessory for anybody to pick up, to me, it becomes like the thing that's incentivized for neurodivergent boys to pick up, to be able to at least perform some type of level of neurotypicality, at least if you still deny by other women or by the opposite sex or whatever, at least you'll be, you feel me, accepted by other dudes that also take on that ideology. And I think it's something real important, because when you get alienated and you feel lonely, the first gang that give you a little bit of community and love and care, you're gonna run to it. And sadly, you feel me, especially during the pandemic and afterwards, since then, a lot of the most alienated, lonesome, you know what I'm saying, boys that's really on the spectrum, they find, you feel me, they sense of community and love through that alt-right pipeline of the manosphere. It's just sad.
That's one of the things I found researching for this next video. I'm really excited to put it out. Is we underestimate the role of community for a lot of these folks, and there's some criticism for us to hold there, because like, I don't want those folks in community with me. I'm just keeping them right. Like if you pop up, like we all connected in some form of fashion. You pop up trying to like ride with we've had folks, in fact, now that we're talking about it, that have popped up in our space and been like, nah, we don't, but like, then the question becomes, where do they go? And like, we have to acknowledge how that undergirds the problem, because when you think about how evangelical manosphere folks are, and how what's the word? Morbidly online? It's a word. Somethingly online, terminally online. When we think about how terminally online some of these folks are, whether neurotypical or not, the reason for that is because this is where their people are. And they evangelize, because you're not just debunking this guy, this person's video, you're attacking their identity. They identify with incel, red pill, MGTOW, so on and so forth. Those are things that tell them that describe them like as a person. And to remove that is to pull them out of a community, often without one to replace it with, which, is a challenge kind of more profound than I think we tend to think about as we talk about these populations. And in those spaces, especially as those spaces do either have explicitly higher rates of neuroatypical diagnoses, or undiagnosed. One study had it as 18% diagnosed and 73% undiagnosed neurodivergence among incels. So that's like the majority of them, where they don't have to talk about, they don't have to mask per se. They're tending to speak each other's language. Like a lot of stuff like that. Like that is a bigger challenge than we think about when we think about just the rhetoric of it. You know what I'm saying?
I think y'all hit the nail on the head. That's the manosphere is a gang, man. That's because when you think about it, why do people join gangs? They join gang. I can tell you why people join gangs. Is they join gangs for community. That's why they do it. That if you ever wanted to know, they don't do it because they want to sell drugs. They don't do it because they want to be little, YNW, Uzi Woozy, whatever. That's not why they do it. They do it because their big cousin is in it. They do it because their big brother is in it. They do it because all of them is in it. Somebody who they got a connection with is somebody who they look up to. If I could tell you, and this is kind of going off on a little bit, but I could tell you, where the OGs used to hang out at where on my way? They used to be at the library. That's where they was at. And that's where they was recruiting the young bulls. They would be like, yo, how you doing in school? You staying in school? You good? You need book bag? You need, this, that, third thing or whatever. And that's how they build that rapport with you so that eventually I ain't never heard nobody getting forced to no gang in my life ever. I ain't never seen anything like they show in the movies. I ain't never seen that. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't have to do that. Same thing goes with the manosphere. You know what I mean? Is you got a community of folk who we just going to keep it a buck, probably wouldn't socialize or would be socialized any other way. You know what I mean? So they find this tribe of like-minded folk online that's willing to extend the olive branch, you know what I'm saying, when, they was the weirdo black cousin growing up that was, into, stuff that, they was into the white boy stuff, you know what I mean? Or, they just acted weird, or they was the church kid, or they was the whatever. And so they get online and, they're socialized. You know what I mean? These were the boys who maybe they ain't get attention, you feel me, from the ladies in school because they didn't perform the kind of masculinity that those women were accustomed to seeing. And one thing
you just hit me in the gut, Bill. You just punched me in the gut with that one, though. You just punched me in the you just punched me in the gut with that one, because it's a reality check to acknowledge that in many different instances, when I was growing up, even though I was dealing with my own neurodivergent symptoms, I had the ability to fit in and the ability to pass in many different instances. It's a gut punch because I'm having to really think and be real with myself and recognize, hey, bro, you, Mr. Lee, uniquely push some niggas into the manosphere. You uniquely created climates that made it conducive to make fun of particular types of black male performance and black male manifestations of them being themselves. You made it where they was ostracized. You called them weird. You called them anime kids. You did certain shit. And even now, when I'm being funny and trying to be like petty about manosphere dudes, and you know what I say? I usually say, y'all the niggas that got a whole bunch of resentments from your childhood because the pretty girl in high school didn't give you a hug. Instead of you going to therapy to deal with the resentment that you still have as a little bitty boy, as an adult, you take havoc on the entire world because that little boy and you still mad that Shorty didn't give you a hug. What you just said though made me realize it's more real than I ever thought about. It made me realize this intersection of being neurospicy and uniquely the incel movement is something I never really thought about until this conversation. I never thought about those two things. You know what I'm saying? Now, granted,
we got a TM neurospicy.
Yeah, neurospicy, and put it on a t-shirt.
You gotta put that on a t-shirt
for real.
Because there is a. Go ahead, Bill. And
what I was going to say is that the thing about it is, because I was on both sides of the coin, right? And then and I've said this so many times, is I ain't realized until I got much older. And then somebody hit me up, or I see somebody or whatever. Somebody, you know, a matter of fact, there was a girl that somehow, some way, we wound up in the same college. We wound up transferring to the same college, and all of a sudden it's, oh, you know, why you ain't never try to talk to me? Why you ain't? You was the same one, wasn't you the one that's? And so I say that to say this, that it goes both ways. Is that these young ladies now, I know we focusing on young men, but a lot of young ladies, especially Black young ladies, are conditioned to see a particular manifestation of masculinity as being desirable, right? And so they wind up, as a result, and I'm from my own experience, I have seen it where they will clown the weirdo boys. They will, you know, all the anime kids, you know, the light skins, the whatever, for the sake of ingratiating themselves to this particular manifestation of masculinity. You understand what I'm saying? And so it restricts them and it restricts their expression. And so it's just the way that, and I keep coming back to this, but just the way that white supremacy has just dug its tendrils into basically every aspect of Black identity, to the point that everything that we do that is heteronormative, that aspires to these hegemonic ideas of what a man is supposed to be, what a woman is supposed to be. And then we wind up performing that for no other reason than the approval of the people around us. And then we wind up suffering as a result.
Hey,
So,
you said twice. So hold on, real fast. I'll be quick too. You said two things I think is very important though. The manosphere is about coalescing, about trying to get the attention and affirmation of other individuals that buy into this ideology at the expense of folks that's against it. So what I've learned, especially as consciously being positioned and how folks in the manosphere don't rock with me, there are a particular type of women that I would respectfully call pygmies that I feel like enable a lot of the communal aspects about how people get badges. Just think about it. When we making fun of in high school or middle school, we making fun of like the awkward Black kid. A lot of times we doing it at the expense or at the hopes of gaining and looking cool for somebody else. And also this idea of which types of masculinity is deemed to be dominated, or which types of masculinity is deemed to be, you feel me, easily to be beat up on. A lot of times those things is being reified as being sent by feminine bodies, by femmes. Whether we talking about, because when we talk about it, it's some gay men and that's manosphere dudes. It's some cisgender, ratchet, beautiful, you know what I'm saying, pick me women. That's they a manosphere. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What I learned from my whole brick lady debacle shit is that there are a lot of different ways in which different genders come in solidarity at the expense of being against somebody else. And it's just like
the way the TERFs run with the fascists, like the way the white films run with the Nazis it'll blow your mind. So hegemonic masculinity was created by R.W. Connell, and she also has the concept that doesn't get brought up as much called emphasized femininity, which is basically what we're talking about. This is something to out there for people that prefer that. That was part of my thesis. And it's exactly what y'all are describing, where the key thing to remember, and we're pulling it back to neuroatypical, is the concept of hegemonic masculinity is just saying there's a specific type of masculinity that runs the game. And it's not specific universally, it's specific to time and place, you know, and culture, right? And so in each of those spots, there's like a list of traits, and then there's the enforcers, you know what I'm saying? And some of those enforcers are women. And the women are enforcing not at the behest of men specifically. And this is the thing that I think people struggle with they struggle, one, with hearing men talk about it because there's the important skepticism. I want to put that out there. Remain skeptical whenever dudes start talking about films, to just keep that third eye open whenever we start, because we always mess up a little bit. But it's also because it's hard for people to separate patriarchy from men as like this intrinsic factor. All men benefit from patriarchy, but the way that patriarchy works is independent of male bodies. It works in and of it, just like how racism doesn't require white people to make it happen. It just kind of, it's this universal force at this point. And so with the goal of gaining favor under patriarchy, somebody else said heteronormativity as well. It's another example. With the goal of emphasizing and creating proximity to heteronormative patriarchy, the weird boys, especially the black boys who have less room to self-actualize and like be their own unique selves, there's gonna be so much heat and ostracism and social sanction on the weird ones. So unlike y'all, back in my day, we didn't have anime kids. If you watched
in
anime
the 50s, his day was the 50s.
FD, I've got to stop you. That's not true, because you and I are the same age, and I was definitely an anime kid.
What it was harder to get those ones. So what I was about to say is that getting anime was so hard that you knew you were weird if you did it. And you dared not say anything.
Okay, that's true. That's true.
FD was an extra in Lovecraft Country.
Right.
I'll say you got away with being like Pokemon, Digimon was the most.
That was my senior year of high school. I'm talking about Ronin
Yeah, that was senior. Man, I was in elementary school.
Yeah. Y'all are young.
Like third grade.
I'm talking about waking up early. I'm talking about Dragon Ball, the first one.
You're talking about waking up Saturday morning at 7 a.m.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Ninja Scroll. I'm talking about the videos that you got your mama to rent from Blockbuster, she not knowing that there were anime boobs in the video when you were 12, 13 years old. Like,
he was born in 1900s, y'all.
Right. So when that was happening, there wasn't no, like, I had no illusions in my mind that I was going to go to school and start an anime club, because like it was too hard to do. And so I said to say that I struggled mightily socially until I learned how to mask. If I had to operationalize language that, again, not diagnosed, but I definitely recognized that my freshman, sophomore year, when I was just I'm going to school, and then my junior, senior year, when I started leaning into being an athlete and lifting weights and, performing a specific type of Black masculinity, two completely different experiences. You know what I'm saying? So that's the big beast we're dealing with here when it comes to how boys are treated and how they need to be identified. And one of the things that I'm very proud of, and I'll stop here because I gotta basically run after I hear what y'all got to say, is because I had that experience when I was a teacher, I found my weird Black boys. They were some of my favorite students because I was like, oh, I know you. I know you. Come on, man. I'm gonna tell you how to do it. You know what I'm saying? I managed and was like the administrator for anime clubs because but I also envied them because they were able to find each other in ways I didn't even imagine when I was their age, partially because of the internet. But like so many people, last thing I promise, I feel like sometimes there's two types of Black boys in the eyes of the public. There's Black excellence, which if you're smart, if you can behave, they will give you the world. I be reminding people like folks don't understand. It's hard for folks to understand sometimes because they'll see little Black boys get every opportunity like possible. And we know some of them. We've been some of them. But I'll tell them like, look, that's them. Then there's those other boys who they don't got nothing but to sit down, don't say nothing, don't touch nothing, keep talking, I'm going to put you out of class. Keep getting put out of class, I'm gonna put you out to school. Keep getting put out to school, I'm gonna put you in jail. And you know what I'm saying? And once that starts at 9, if not earlier.
Yeah, I'm about to say shit, 7, 8. You know what I mean? What? Black boy celebration, black boy toleration. Ain't no in between, really. Goddamn, if you a black being tolerated, sit down, shut up, don't touch nothing. You black celebrated, oh, you can't do no wrong. If you fart too loud, they're gonna be like, oh my god, that was so miraculous. Did you hear how the fart left the ass like that? That was amazing. It's like, damn, what? And I know for me, I had the opportunity to navigate both of those depending on where I was at. And I found my proximity to whiteness and blackness usually dictated how magical Negro I was seeing or how thuggish, ruggish bone I was seeing. And just sadly, you feel me, at the end of my career, I was around more balanced ideas of like around AP honors classes, and with the black folks, I got to really see like, okay, over here I'm tolerated, over here I'm celebrated, and I just figured out how to navigate it. But a lot of what I call survival's guilt from how I got done, because I know a lot of niggas that's looking for commissary and mail because they was not as charismatic or charming with their neuro spiciness as I was. And as a 33-year-old, it's something I'd definitely be like, damn.
Wow. Great discussion. Like, I know, FD, you've got to pop off. Do you want to pop off here before we get into the next part?
Yeah, I guess that makes the most sense. Plus, I need to. I took a flight. My back is killing me. That's the age I'm at. Is I was in the airplane. I sat down for too long on the airplane, and I've been stretching like this ever since. Yeah, man, this is a great conversation. The thing I'll leave us with is when it comes to black boys who are neurotypical, I think the thing we just touched on is probably the one that needs the most air, because it's something I think a lot of even other black people don't realize that they do, and how they, it's really an insidious part of patriarchy, in that when you find a black boy that can grow into that idealized masculine image that doesn't have lights follow their computer. When you find that, it's almost like finding, a rare metal. And you want to pour into that because you know how hard that is, right? And like, I don't begrudge seeing young black boys with potential and being like, oh, I'm gonna mold you. I'm gonna give you everything you need, because I know other people in society are gonna be trying to resist it. I get that. But those in-betweens and most definitely those, what'd you say, black tolerated, need so much more love, attention, affection, assurance than they're getting. Because we don't see that in them until they show it to us, or until they show their ass. You know what I'm saying? And it's definitely something for us to engage with. Is how are we invisibilizing all these other black boys who don't fit the ideal mold, or how are we forcing them into a category to make sense of them? But let me get out of here. Thank you all so much. I'll be in touch with everybody. Peace and blessings.
Thank you. So I'm gonna slightly change the conversation minorly, because he said something, and y'all were all saying this. So I am a trans masc AFAB. So I was born female, and I've transitioned, and I've got 2 older sons. They're about to be 19 and 20. So my oldest is, and then we're Choctaw. So I don't have the cultural backing of the skin color people think I am. So, and my oldest son doesn't either. And so he had all of these, he was tolerated. He was very much a tolerated person in school. And then I watched as he tried to go the manosphere route, and I heard something out of his mouth. And I've been in the gaming community and the online, that bro space, since well before I ever transitioned. I was an outlier female in the spaces. And so I heard those words. You know what words? You know the words. And so as soon as I heard the words, I would start correcting it and correcting it and correcting it. And last year, he came to me and said, why do you always win? I'm like, I've been doing policy work for most of your life. I'm going to know it better than the people you're talking to online. And suddenly the words that he was saying to me changed and went into this more progressive realm that I was very, very happy to hear, because it was terrifying there for a little bit, because like I hear what's happening. I've got to change this, but I don't want to do it by like brute force, because that's not helping him. Like that brute force is never going to help him. So like I stopped doing it and was like, let's lean in, be curious about this, and then correct his lack of vision of like what other people are, because it started off with something that was racist towards Asian Americans. And I'm like, oh, we need to fix this. We need to fix this now. And then I explained, it was like, so we were going to the library and there were signs for political campaigns, and one was in Chinese, because we've got a high Chinese population in this area. And he said something racist about it. I'm like, why do you think that? And he told me, and I'm like, well, there are people that this is probably their primary language, and it's probably easier for them to read the sign than anything else. And so like it was just those little bitty conversations of like spattering in information that really, I think, changed the course of what he was doing online, because I didn't want to completely like shut it all down, because that's not the answer either. But I want to hear what y'all think.
Say about it's a lot to unpackage, man. I'll try to be quick, little Bill, because then listen. What you hit on to me show me that when it comes to oppression and little boys, it's usually very transactional on how you're able to negotiate how oppressive you want to be based off how much you want to be accepted. I don't think it's coincidental that most bro spaces be hella racist, sexist, patriarchal, ableist, all that, because it's usually the tools and how you're able to climb the hierarchy. I don't think it's ironic that when you go to the top of the bro hierarchies, that typically the individuals that have the most poetic ways and most creative ways of being oppressive is usually at the top. I don't think it's ironic or coincidental at all. And then the other thing I was thinking of is really when it comes to just this intersection of like the incel movement and ableism, it's really something I'm talking about. Y'all can take credit for it, but I'm probably gonna make a video or two over this today on TikTok or something, because it really blew my mind. Like I almost feel like I'm responsible in certain instances. Like damn, like I recognize I was one of them people that always had a relationship with other individuals that was neurospicy, but they wore it better than I did, or it was visibly they were a part of the spectrum and I wasn't. So I feel like I was able to get away with certain shit. But I think that what I did was I engaged in what I call today sucker solidarity. You know what I'm saying? You acknowledging your son was trying to engage in sucker solidarity and repeating some of the shit he heard other suckers say, trying to get in solidarity with them. I'm acknowledging that the younger me did do a lot of sucker shit at the expense of a lot of my individuals on the spectrum and a lot of folks that's probably willy-nilly in that community right now, because I want to be cool and accepted at the expense of them being seen as not cool and not being accepted. And I think that when it's like to think about it a little bit, how many times have you heard Black people, Black progressive people uniquely, regardless of their gender, respond to an incel person with this? Who hurt you?
So I got to start out by because I've cited this article a bunch of times now. Stephanie from Wine and Chill had put me onto this article. The main takeaway, well, it's a bunch of stuff to it, but the main takeaway I took from the beginning is that most white people, and this isn't just white exclusive, but this is just to get to the bigger point. Most white people don't have intimate enough relationships with non-white people to really know them, to say that they are in community with them. So they get the majority of their information on non-white people from the media they consume, right? Same rules apply with your son. Same rules apply to me. Same thing apply to Lee. Same thing applies to everyone. When you don't spend an extended amount of time in community with somebody, you're going to draw conclusions based on one, what somebody told you, or two, something you done seen on TV. It never fails. So the way that you stop all of that is you say, why do you think that way? What makes you think that this group of people is this particular type of way? What makes you think why do you generalize this group of people? And then you begin to unpack that, and then you see the unraveling in their head that, oh, I really did just hear this from somewhere. I don't really got no basis for this. So it's just a matter of, it's an old saying that says hard knocks and steady blows. You know what I mean? It don't happen overnight because the what's the word I'm looking for? The conditioning didn't happen overnight. It happened over a matter of time. Nobody wakes up a racist. You know what I mean? Nobody is born a sexist. Nobody is born a homophobe. These are learned behaviors, and it takes multiple instances of that being ingrained in you till you get to the point that now this is the way that you're conditioned to think. So now you find I think of it a lot of ways, if you look at a good example of this, this is pre-internet, not pre-internet, but pre-social media. If you look at the way that people like I don't even remember his name, but Michael Rappaport's character in Higher Learning was socialized. You look at how Ed Norton wound up becoming a Nazi, right? It was just little suggestions just planted in their ear. Ain't nobody forced them, but they said, "Oh, you see how the blacks is acting, right? You see they making all that noise, right? You see they doing all and the play on it, and at the same time, oh, why don't you come over here where we'll give you a safe haven. We'll give you somewhere, you understand, where you can be away from all of them, and then that's when you get them, and this is what happens in a lot of these, especially in gaming spaces that tend to be predominantly white boys of a particular age. They dominate that sphere. So you get that, and again, and another thing is because you're in a space now where you don't have to worry, and this is something that I talked about in the video in January. One of the worst parts about social media is that it puts us in a space where we can basically say whatever we want, do whatever we want, behave any way that we want without any real consequence. You know what I'm saying? So now you're in this space where you can say all of this racist rhetoric and nobody's going to check you to your face. You don't have the threat of, if I'm gonna keep a buck, sometimes physical violence to prevent you from saying certain things, right? And so the more accustomed you become to being able to say and to think a certain way, then the more you're now conditioned to think that way. So now when you remove a person from that space, it's just like a drug. You got to detox them from it. They got to go through withdrawal. It's not going to happen overnight. But again, hard knocks and steady blows. 12 steps. What's the first step? Hello, my name is William. I am X and Y and Z. Hi, William. You understand what I'm saying? So that's how that deconditioning, that reprogramming, and going back to a point that Feetcat made earlier, is that it doesn't stop with just telling folk, oh, you think wrong, and that's it. What do you do to give them a space to come to? Because at the end of the day, that's why they went over there to begin with. That's why they got in that space, because they got into a space of like-minded people that said it's okay to think the way that you do, because we all think the same way too. So now you bringing them out of that, or you trying to pull them from up out of that, and you telling them, all right, the way that you're thinking is wrong. All right, so where do I go after this conditioning is finished? Oh, I ain't got no space for you, bro. You know, you just going to. So that's the thing. We got to be willing to give folk the opportunity to be better. Ain't just enough to tell folk to be better, but we got to facilitate an environment where they can be better and they can learn to be better and understand and recognize that it ain't going to happen overnight. They may say some things, they may do some things that's out of pocket, but that's where you step in and you check them and be like, all right, so what made you say that? What made you think that? You got to challenge folk. That's the thing. All this whole time, they ain't been challenged on that rhetoric. They haven't been challenged on that thought process, so it just becomes natural. But once you start to challenge them and force them to think, then that's how you deprogram.
You know, I'm thinking about, so there's a podcast I watch offline that is part of the crooked media sphere from like the people that were Obama communications people. And there was the episode this past weekend was about a book called Look Again that talked about the way that repeating something over and over and over again automatically makes anybody's brain think, well, maybe that could be true. But then I was thinking about it in terms of the way that you put this into the community. And so like when you're talking about neurodivergent kids that can't perform neurotypicality, how they end up in this space where it's like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And they tell you, you're not doing anything wrong. And like, this is how it starts, but then you get more and more sucked into that community. So you can start hearing more and more of the same thing. And then those things become truth in your head because there isn't anybody else. But it never actually, I don't think it actually starts with those thoughts. I think it starts with something else altogether. I think it's this wanting to perform masculinity. I actually think back to a conference I was at, I want to say it was in 2013. And I was sitting around with this bunch of autistic white men. And they were so proud of themselves because they had hot girlfriends, because they had read the pickup guide book and it had been successful because they were white and had money. So they were talking about how they need to do whole presentations around how I got my hot girlfriend. And like, this is fucked up. But like you see how it goes down this track of like, oh, I can do this because these other guys that are like me have done this. But it's all a lie. It's really a lie because that's not why they were able to pick somebody up. So yeah, I will let y'all chime in.
Well, I mean, it's performance. Again, going back to it's look at what I got, guys. You know what I mean? That's what it comes back to. At the end of the day, it going back to the gang analogy. You know, why do you put in work for the gang? You put in work to impress your home. You put in work to impress the big homies. You put in work to impress, you know, the folk around you. You understand? You know, look at the work that I put in. You know, look at the lick that I got. You know what I mean? So it's the same. It's the same idea. A lot. I'd argue and say that most of what we do as men is not even. It's not even for the affection of women, but it's for the approval of other men, the partners we choose, the career avenues we go down, the sports we play, the music we listen to. Everything we do it for the approval of the other men around us, because again, we're all to some degree policing each other's masculinity, and we're policing each other's masculinity based on that same standard of hegemonic manhood that says this is what a man is, this is the standard. You understand? We all got to live up to this standard, and we all going to police one another to ensure that we all live up to this standard. So that's what that all comes down to. And again, going back to the idea that, you know, being neuroatypical, you're already behind the eight ball, that, you know, you don't perform typical behaviors of most other people. So you're already seen as being other. You're already seen as being deviant. So it just incentivizes you even more to say, one of the point that I make about black men, and I make this consistently, is, you know, because that's my son in the background. If y'all can't tell, it's past his bedtime. But one of the things that we have a tendency to do as black men is we overperform when it comes to our sexuality. And the reason why we do that is, again, to compensate for the other, specifically wealth, that we were robbed of. So we overcompensate in other areas. So as a neuroatypical person, you're going to overcompensate in space in areas that you know that you can perform, that you know you can do this masking, to make up for the other spaces where you may be lacking in. So that's what that comes down to, if you ask me.
I'm wondering then, because so some of the things that we think about when we think about especially autistic boys is or autistic children period, is there's this almost infantilization as well that comes into it when somebody is identified, that they can't understand how to treat people better and can't understand what to do in these situations, when I don't think that that's actually true. I think that we can still teach that no matter the person, but I think it comes down to what we talk about a lot is coming down to creating your own boundaries and learning about consent, mutual consent on things, because these are like these are the things that allow us to like start seeing the other person as a person unto themselves, and also ourselves as a person unto ourselves, instead of the person that everyone wants us to become.
Definitely.
And then it's more about learning yourself so you can learn how to better support the things that are going to get you in trouble. Because there's a ton of those. But we want to make sure that the underlying part is that we're teaching all of these consent things, because the problem that I see a lot within the way we do everything with autistic children in particular is it's so compliance based that it doesn't matter if you don't know when you're supposed to pull it out. And it doesn't ever teach you how to understand yourself. It really tells you just, here, perform this thing and you'll be fine. But as you said, Bill, most people can't. There's many people that can't, and those are the kids that are going to be the most hurt, and they're the ones that that my organization at least tends to think most about, because of the really bad outcomes that are most likely going to befall them.
I just can't stop thinking about how a lot of the criticisms against the incel movement, incel community, be usually structured in like ableist assumptions and ideology, and just really can't get past the idea of that incel being involuntary, and me thinking about how liberated I felt when I got diagnosed with ADHD, because I acknowledged I was able to learn for the first time in certain impulses and certain, you feel me, shit that I do that I feel like I don't have control over. You see what I'm saying? So for me, it's thinking about like the involuntary celibacy. So for me, almost like in the weirdest way, this conversation has, I think in a very productive way, allowed for me to humanize, not necessarily the entire incel movement, the entire community, but at least different individuals or different sentiments that lead individuals to either A, being stable in that community, or B, push them into the, you know what I'm saying, the entry point to that, to that community, and just acknowledging that a lot of the normalized jokes and criticisms is like a lot of the shit that pushed those men into those communities. And then the last thing that I'm thinking about is when I first learned about what the incel movement was and how violent it was, I remember being caught off guard with thinking about how there's been material violence that's happened based off of motherfuckers being upset about what happened in the virtual reality. You see what I'm saying? And it's making me think about right now, like, damn, these are individuals that I bet in many instances had so much that they thought the most rational thing to do was to just raise, like to just re-violence. You know what I'm saying? So it's making me really just like, man, like really, I'm really, my wheels is turning. They turn.
I think at the end of the day, the thing to remember is it's real easy, you know, because just the way that I'm conditioned is that I don't have a problem clowning niggas. I really don't. But I have to remind myself that at the end of the day, it's real easy, when we use terms, like manosphere, incels, red pill, all this other content, and to look at these folks and to look at the labels that we apply to them or that they've applied to themselves, and forget the fact that at the end of the day, this is very rarely are people that simple. You understand what I'm saying? That there's something beneath something beneath the surface. There's a story behind how they got to be that way. You understand what I'm saying? And I think the way to address it is to address, again, the story behind how they even got to be thinking how they're thinking. You understand what I'm saying? And sometimes it's just as simple as, nah, nigga, that ain't how that works. Sometimes it's as simple as that. But
like, what do you mean by that?
right. Like, what you like? What you mean? Like for one thing, one thing that I do is that it's especially the young bulls, when I catch them using the term female, right? And I gotta stop as somebody who used to use that terminology and not understand why it was problematic. I gotta stop them and say, all right, what do you mean by female? Anything could be, a dog can be a female, right? You got female cats, you got female cows. Matter of fact, that's what a cow is. A bull is a male, and a cow. So what do you mean? You understand how referring to this human being as, exclusively in terms of their reproductive biology is dehumanizing, right? You understand that, right? Oh no, I ain't think about it like that, OG. I ain't think about it like that. Well, now you understand. So it's not enough to just tell a person why what they're doing, why what they're saying, why what they're thinking is wrong. But you got to go beyond. And again, what do you mean by that? Do you really understand? Are you really conscious? Are you really aware of what you're saying? You understand what I'm saying? Do you understand the implications of what you're saying? Do you understand the implications of your behavior? Do you understand that, you calling this young woman out of her name because, she returned your DM or whatever? How you think that's going to affect her, when she go home at night? You don't think that she thinking about you done call her all kinds of this, that, and the third thing and all these, and call her out of her name and said she looked like this, that, and whatever? How do you think that would make you feel if she said all that stuff about you, about your mama, about your sister? Okay, then don't do it again. You understand what I'm saying? So it has to. It's funny, we talk about the infantilization, but I think about the same way that I do with my kids. When my kids do something wrong, I got to sit there and explain to them why you're not supposed to touch X and Y and Z, why I told you not to do. Now, this is why you don't do all of this. This is why you don't throw, you understand, daddy's phone against the wall, because it's going to break and then you ain't ever going to be able to see it again. You understand what I'm saying? And so it comes a point where just acknowledging the wrong is not enough, but you got to explain this is the lot that we're given if we are really going to attempt to break down these walls and to get folk to think a different way. Is it doesn't just stop at just telling folk they're wrong, but it's having a conversation. It's finding out the story and then addressing the story behind why they're wrong in the first place.
This has been great. We've got about 8 minutes left, and I want to give some time so people, if anyone wants to ask any questions, go ahead and do that. With what you were talking about consciously, sorry, I don't know if it's that or George. I don't know which one I'm supposed to say. So I was thinking about it because there's this tweet that went around for a little bit, which was, in order to truly understand or say that you accept autistic people, you have to accept that you have to like the weird people that you don't actually want to like, and they don't have to disclose just so you can like them. So something that you can go dig and find, because I know you like taking those pieces up.
Hell yeah. I'm definitely gonna keep that in mind. I'm gonna keep it in mind so much that I know that we really indoctrinated to I feel like accept certain people that has been deemed as acceptable, and then reject the ones that's been deemed rejectable, and then seeing that there's usually a consensus of how people get marked in different spaces and places. And I know for me, when I think about like the different ways I've been impacted by ADHD, I know there are different times that my insecurities or different times of my internalization of being deficient, it really impacts how my self-worth and how I communicate myself with other individuals. So for me, it's just really thinking about it from a more, I guess, compassionate standpoint of like, even though I think a lot of y'all full of shit that they flush down toilets, I still can give you the benefit of the doubt in certain instances. Like, you know what? You a dumbass, but in certain instances, it ain't even your fault. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that I'm being a little bit facetious in how I'm saying it, but I'm being genuine and acknowledging, like, nah, I can acknowledge that, you feel me? Especially if I could consider myself an advocate for individuals that's on the spectrum in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It's like, yeah, I don't want to be in community with some of y'all, how FD was saying, but in many different instances, I probably could be in community with a few of y'all. As a matter of fact, I'm probably the reason why some of y'all at 30 in y'all 30s and not in community with people like me, because I pushed you out of community when I was 15, when I was 16, when I was 21. You see what I'm saying? So I'm really coming to the conclusion, really just thinking about like, damn, we ostracize people for crazy ways. And to your point, a person shouldn't have to disclose to me they have a diagnosis for me to be nice to them or for me to accept them. I think that is the crazy part about this shit right now. It's like, what you say, bro? Are you ADHD autistic? If you is, I give you a pass. If not, it's like that's ableist in itself. You know what I'm saying? So really just going to my point that I said this a minute ago, is like, damn, I'm really coming to grips that a lot of the more normalized criticisms against the incel movement is structured by ableism. And I'm just sitting with it. Maybe people watching this should sit with it too, goddamn.
I'm glad you're sitting with it. It's great. I was hoping, because I've heard you say some things and it's like, oh, good. You agreed to come on, so like you can hear this perspective. Goodness. Okay, I need to rewind what you said because I wanted to say something else. Give me a second. Oh, it's the way that you call it out versus the way I call it out when I hear those things. It's slightly different. Like you were, like what you're talking about, you went hard against it. Instead, what I try to do is this light little, I'm going to give this little dropper, and then I'm going to give another little dropper later, and another one later, until you get to the point of like, oh, I'm kind of fucked up with what I'm thinking here. And then hopefully you turn and start thinking about it in different ways. I can't guarantee that's going to happen, but like I see how it's happened in the, I'm in an arcade gaming community in my area. And so like I do this frequently where it's just that little bit of information so that people can get off track. And I think that what I consider that to be more kind, because I do not like what you're saying. I cannot stand what you're saying, but I know that if I go too far, you're just going to outright reject it. But if I give you just enough information for you to question yourself, and I do it over and over again over a period of time, that you can hear the language change. But it takes the long game and being in community with people for the long game. And luckily, there's enough people in that community I still like that I can do that for the other people in it. That I'm not so worried about what they're going to think, because like I know there's other people that agree with me and have already thought about this more thoroughly. Okay, I really like that response, and I probably should show that because I'm terrible at the whole doing stream yard at the same time. But the recap is that you need to understand the story of this human regardless of diagnosis and background. And yes, that is entirely the point. Because and then we need to do that especially from the parenting side and the education side and the therapy side, so that we're not trying to make people perform what we've been told we're supposed to perform, and at the same time give information so that they can't go down that path of ignoring that other people exist and only thinking about their own shit.
And when you said that too, made me think about when the black healthcare worker got shot by law enforcement a few years ago in Florida for trying to help their patient that was having like a episode or whatnot. It made me realize or think about right now the realization of how insidious the intersections of blackness and like disability is. Because I believe from a certain instance, black people are seen as being inherently disabled while also always already denying the ability to be disabled. You know what I'm saying? Which is an oxymoron in itself. But I think that it's a part of the struggle and being able to acknowledge and have a conversation that's with compassion, love, and care and understanding and moving forward, because it's so much to unpackage this double-edged sword of being denied notions of disability while always already being seen as inherently disabled. You know what I'm saying? And just being able to really bring credence to how that plays out in real life. You know what I'm saying? And then recognizing how like being black, I always supposed to be cool. So I will argue that like, you know, white folks doing like non-cool shit. It's like, yeah, dogs bark 2 + 2 is 4, and white folks is not cool. You know, whatever, right? I think that it's a different different pathology and stigma when you seen as a black man and you're not able to reach a certain pinnacle of coolness, or you're not able to access a certain level of coolness. Because in many different instances, you seen as being disloyal to the like ingredients of being black men, or you are defined black masculinity, because how dare you not be cool? And it's making me really come to grips and think about like all the various ways that we push folks out of being accepted because the way in which they've expressed themselves is just not cool, or make us feel uncomfortable. And I think that's what you're getting at. It's like, hey, can you accept motherfuckers that's so weird that make you uncomfortable? And even if you don't necessarily just accept their discomfort, can you not act out and give them backlash because of how they are present? Because the most time, motherfucker is present. Like, I didn't do nothing. I'm just being present, and my impulsivity and hyperactivity is here with me. Goddamn, it's with me. It's in me. But as a result, now you wanna come at me crazy. Really sitting with like, yeah, the involuntary part of it. I end this rant by just really thinking with like, the I in incel stands for involuntary. Think about how much disability, may it be neurodivergent, may it be physical, may it be X, Y, and Z, that's involuntary. Disclaimer, not saying everybody that's on the spectrum got to be incel, nothing like that, but still acknowledging that a lot of the motherfuckers be on the spectrum. There's something there. There's something there.
We are at time. Do y'all either want to have any wrapped up or thought wrap-ups? There we go. That's the right order. Before we get going. All right. Well, then we are good. I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream. And thank you, everyone, for watching and participating.